right, welcome everybody to Now That's Debatable. We are live, and instead of a guest this week, live in person at least, we are going to be doing a video response, which is something we've done before. If you're a longtime fan, if you remember us in our days of old, we did a response to one of Matt Walsh's videos. This week, we are going to be doing a response to a friend of ours that we both know. And his YouTube name is IgoByWilliam. The video we're going to be taking on today is The Universe Needs God to Exist, which we will link in the description. We'll make sure that if you want to watch the full uninterrupted video, you can find it. And in the meantime, before I get our faces up on the screen, or while I'm doing that, if you could introduce us to Relic Media, and then I'll go ahead and get us up on the screen.
Yep, Relic Media is a podcast streaming service that we've teamed up with. We got several podcasts already up on the service, and there's more coming. If you have a new podcast, you want to get more viewers, hit us up, hit up Relic Media directly, and we can get you part of the Relic Media family.
Awesome. One thing I will note as we get this thing started is that I'll be switching back and forth between the screen that we're on and the screen that the video's on. So you may notice a little bit of a delay. That doesn't mean we're not going to be responding to people in chat. If it freezes, that's something I will correct. If it doesn't correct within itself within a minute or so, I'll go ahead and correct it automatically. But if you notice anything like echo or anything, please let us know in chat, and we will try to get it adjusted accordingly. As we take off, the other thing I wanted to mention, and I know AAA wanted to address this as well, is that this is not an attack of the person that's in the video by any means. This is an attack of the argument presented in the video. So it's not even an attack of all their arguments or their beliefs. This isn't an attack against a deity or the existence of a deity. This video is specifically a response to the Kalam argument as presented in the video.
Yep, that's it. Yep. And also I want to add that this isn't an argument against God. This is an argument that we are explaining why his argument for God is bad. So you could be a Christian and still think this is a bad argument. So just put that out there. So it doesn't mean like, oh, if you're convinced by everything that we say, then now you have to be an atheist. That is not what's going on. There could be other reasons why. There could be other arguments that are good arguments for God. But
right, you can have your very own compelling arguments for why you believe. And if this is one of them, and we were to break this down and you say, oh, this is a good logical reasoning against this argument, that doesn't mean everything you believe comes crumbling down with it. It just means that this argument maybe needs to be reevaluated, or that you need to reconsider the argument on a whole. That doesn't mean that it disproves everything you believe in by any means.
Yep. Believe it or not, when I was a Christian, I thought this was a bad argument.
I thought it was an insufficient argument at best.
Yeah.
And we'll kind of get into why in the video and in the response video. So are you ready to tackle the video at hand?
Let's do it.
All right. You let me know if you want to pause, or if I think I should pause, I will do so. Just keep in mind there may be slight delay, but we'll try to keep this as fair as possible to everyone.
Cool. Let's do it.
All right. But I'll do this. So I'm going to pause there. And the one thing I want people to take note of, if you're going to watch this in its entirety and watch our critique of the argument, is although the beginning of the video starts with the truth in Jesus from the Bible, there's two things that the creator of this video, his name is William, makes abundantly clear. One, the Kalam argument, even if it is a good argument, does not get you to the God of the Bible. He openly admits this. Two, there is really no reference specific to the Bible for any of the claims he's going to make in this video. So this is not an attack on the Bible itself. It is literally just the way that this argument is presented. So this is an argument of logic and reason. To reason a God, it is not an argument from the Bible, and it is not an argument that specifically would point to the God of the Bible. So I want to point that out before we start breaking down the argument further.
Hey, real sec, could you do like I just got word from someone that the audience may not be able to hear the video. Just play like a little snippet, and I just want to do audio, quick audio test.
Bible, and it is not an argument that specifically would point to the God of the Bible. I want to point that out before.
All right, pause it.
Okay. Were you able to hear the video?
Okay. I don't think the audience can hear it.
Okay, let me see. Where's audience going? Give me 1 second while I adjust this.
So he said he could hear it that time.
Ah, okay. Gotcha. That's odd.
So he says
change any settings.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm not. Just leave it as he says he can hear it. So
all right,
we're good. Good. Appreciate it. It's Morpheus, by the way. Let us know.
I saw the group. It's odd that it says you can't hear it again.
Yeah.
So this is very strange. It's odd. Let me see. That's me echoing. So this is very strange. Let me turn this on. Give me 1 second. That's me echoing. So this is very strange.
I think you were echoing because I had the
okay
speaker.
I have mine on as well. All right, let's try this one more time, and I think everybody should be able to hear it. I'm going to mute myself. Please mute yourself as well for the test, just so we don't hear a bunch of echoes and reverbs.
We're going to be talking about truth in general, but the truth of Christ, Christian apologetics, defending the faith using science, logic, reasoning, and of course the Word of God to articulate why God exists and why that God is Jesus Christ.
Okay, I could hear it on my end. I don't know if you could hear it on yours in your audio end stream. Yes, no. But now you're muted again, don't forget.
I heard it. Hey, Morpheus, you can let us know. Yes, he heard it. Okay, cool. Hey, bro, if you could let us know at any point during this that you can't hear it.
I adjusted it so the audio is pointing directly to us and to the stream, so we should be good. I just don't want it echoing. So as long as we both just have our headsets on, we should be good. Apologize for the slow delay. All right. Anything you wanted to mention in the intro since we've watched it 3 times now?
No, I think we're good.
All right. Let's go ahead and get it going then.
All right.
So I'm passionate about apologetics, and I want to help invigorate Christians to learn how to defend the faith in any moment. So, because some people, some atheists, have intellectual objections. They're thinking things like, well, how is it possible that God exists? And if God exists, why does evil happen? And I feel like science explains the world adequately. We don't need God. What do we need God for? So they have questions like that and a host of other questions and objections. So as Christians, we need to be able to meet them intellectually and talk these things through, go through the historicity of Christ and show that he was an actual real person and why he is God, show the evidence of the resurrection, things like that. And so if you're an atheist and you're looking at this channel now and you're like, dude, come on, another Christian, great. I think you should stick around. You should stick around.
We will.
Because if God is real, then that's the most important thing we are ever going to talk about. Okay? Most important thing we're ever going to talk about and discover. If God is real, your life has purpose, your life has value and meaning. And when you die, which we all will, there is something after when you die. And God
Can you pause it right
will be
there?
Sure.
So this had nothing to do with the Kalam. I didn't even intend on saying this, but it was just when he said that if this God is real, then your life has purpose. Like that's not something I've ever really understood. Like as if like God gives things purpose, or that people can't have their own purpose. You know, to me, it's just a strange thing to assert that. I mean, like oftentimes when I have conversations with people on the street about this stuff, or even on a podcast, you know, they say, "Oh, there's no God, there's no purpose, there's no right and wrong," all that type of stuff. And that's just not how anything works. You know, like a purpose is, you know, is subjective, and so it could come from a God, it could just come from another person. So, but
yeah, and again, that doesn't particularly reflect on the Kalam argument. It's just a statement inserted here. And I will say that I have had a lot of similar conversations, because I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of Christians, given my history and background, where it seems that it's their God that gives them purpose. So without a God, it's hard for them to understand how you can have a purpose. And if that's the reason you're believing in God, and that's the only reason you're believing in God, I hope you find purpose elsewhere, because that's a very poor reason to do it. And I think there's a lot of people that don't believe in the same God as you, or that don't believe in God at all, that fully live lives with a purpose. So, just my 2 cents there. Ready to continue?
Yeah, let's go.
And we need to be prepared to meet him. Okay? I like the Kalam cosmological argument because it explains very well how the universe got here and the necessity for God causing the universe. Okay,
so can we pause it right there?
The universe began to exist.
So he's already messing up. He said he liked the Kalam cosmological argument to existence, right? So no, it doesn't. Like it doesn't explain anything. Just the argument. Like it goes, everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause for its existence. It doesn't explain anything. It's just a series of assertions. That's all it is. And also, it doesn't, nor does it explain why God is necessary for it. Right? Notice God isn't mentioned in any of the two premises, so it can't be in the conclusion. And the syllogism remain valid. So it does not explain how the universe came into existence. And no, it does not require a God. I'm saying for that argument. The Kalam does not make an argument for God. It makes an argument for a cause. All right.
Yep, I agree.
Right? So scientists all around the world agree. There's a consensus that universe.
So right there, stop.
I knew you were going to stop here. I was ready for it.
Yeah. So he's like, he says the universe. First of all, like, I mean, it's. I already, like, my antennas already start dinging when I hear somebody say, like, all scientists agree. I mean, like, so
it's kind of like the old saying, put 100 people in a room and try to get them all to agree on something, and even if that something is overtly obvious, like the sun exists, you're gonna have somebody to deny it just out of stubbornness. Well, there's like 8 billion people on the planet, and I have no idea how many of those have at least some sort of degree in science, but I mean, there's no way they all agree on any one thing. It's just not possible. So I agree with you. The red flags start popping off and the bells start ringing when I hear somebody say, well, everyone agrees and everyone knows. Well, no, a lot of people don't agree.
Right. Did he say depart from nothing yet? We might have to play it for maybe like 5 seconds.
Yeah, I think we put it right there. It's right at the end of this sentence. So
could you take it back like 3 seconds? I want everybody to hear the whole thing.
Sure.
And to exist, right? So scientists all around the world agree, there's a consensus that the universe had a beginning, and that beginning came out of nothing.
Stop.
Okay? At one point there was nothing.
So, all right. So first, I can tell you it is categorically false that all scientists agree that the universe began out of nothing. Right?
I'm going to say that it's scientifically, it's categorically false that all scientists agree
believe it?
That the universe began.
Yeah, I know, right? I honestly, like, I was looking. I spent some time looking for scientists who actually believe that the universe began from nothing. I couldn't find anyone that says that. The closest thing that I found was Lawrence Krauss, and if you read the book, he's arguing. He's talking about quantum field theory. So it's not a nothing. He's talking about how space itself has energy. He's talking about the quantum fluctuations. That's what's going on. But so. Here's what's going on. So with he says the universe began out of nothing. He's referring to the Big Bang, right? He thinks that there was like nothing, right? Which I don't even know exactly what he means by nothing. I don't know if he means like a zero energy state, if like zero matter, zero energy. If that's what he means, our best models of physics tells us that that's not even possible, right? Because of quantum field theory, right? There is energy everywhere. You cannot get rid of it. The quantum fluctuations will not allow it. So but he thinks, yes, there was nothing. And then I guess at some point this little dot popped up out of for like no reason, and then boom, exploded. Right? So that's not what's going on. So the Big Bang is not the beginning of everything. It's not the beginning of the universe. It is the beginning of our local presentation of space-time. When he talk about when he say that the universe began 13.8 billion years ago, they're using Einstein's field equations to measure cosmic inflation and work their way backwards, right? And Einstein's field equations, they work perfectly up until you get to a point called the Planck length. Right there, his equations fail. Right? You reach a point called a singularity. We'll come to that later. Because I don't think he understands what a singularity is. He thinks it's a single point. That's not what it is. So you reach the point where called a singularity, whereas the metrics that you're using to measure something becomes infinite. So you reach a point where Einstein's field equations tells us that the universe has zero volume and infinite density. Right? What that means is Einstein's field equations stopped working. Right, so we need another theory. Right,
it's just like when we're trying to determine things like the possibility of something going faster than the speed of light. Like, we don't know that it's possible. Yeah. It's just quite assumed that it's not. But what happens is we literally just our mathematics break down.
Yes, the same thing happens.
Yep.
Yeah, because your density becomes infinite. So it's a very similar thing. And so the Big Bang is not at the beginning of the universe. It's just the beginning of where we're able to describe it. We do think there was something going on before then. That's what quantum field. That's what M theory is about. Superstring theory, loop quantum gravity. These are attempts to rectify Einstein's field equation, general relativity, and to rectify them with the standard model in quantum mechanics. So if we can do this, then we can look past the Big Bang. So it is not so we don't have a universe beginning out of nothing. It's a universe beginning out of something. But that something we cannot describe because our equations aren't working. We need it better. We need something better than general relativity. We need something better than the standard model.
And I'll get into it a bit later because the argument deep dives a little bit into the alternative, or at least an alternative presented by William here. And
you know what?
Something that I want to break down, but that doesn't happen until a little later in the video, so I'll save it till then.
Also, I wanted to say, so that was interesting is I was reading through some of the comments on the little short that he put on IG, which is a snippet from this video, and also on YouTube. And so we may be like the fourth or fifth person to correct him on this, but it seems like he's just holding his ground. And if that's what you're doing, I strongly encourage you to just go look at the science. I could send you some videos, some lectures. You're definitely wrong on this. This is categorically false.
Yeah, I mean, there are theories that the universe didn't even begin at the singularity, or that the universe didn't begin at all. That it's like there's some theories out there, and I'm not saying they're accurate or valid or how strong they are. There's some theories that state that the universe as we know it will end in essentially collapsing into a giant black hole, which would eventually become a singularity to essentially jumpstart another universe. So it's quite literally looping over and over again. And not saying that that's a valid theory. I'm just saying that there's a theory out there that states that the universe didn't even begin, even as our presentation of it. It was literally the end of another universe that started our current presentation of the universe. So, couple problems with the theory so far.
And then now there is something, which is the universe. So if the universe had a beginning, that means the universe has a cause.
Can we stop it right there?
Yeah, I'm gonna stop it there.
Yeah, because he said the universe has a beginning, so therefore the universe has a cause. I can give you examples of things that from our best models of physics tells us do not have a cause, and that is the fluctuations in the quantum field. So I don't want to go into a lot of detail here, but the gist of it. So if these fluctuations that happen all around us, if you were to take a true vacuum, right, you pull out everything out of every atom, every quark, every piece of radiation, you would think right now this vacuum would reach a temperature of absolute zero. No, there's still heat being detected, right? Because there is these quantum fluctuations. There's these particles, electron and is antiparticle, the positron, that just morph into existence. It's just boop, and then they touch, and then cease to exist, and they seem to be causeless. So that there's an example of something that's beginning to exist doesn't have a cause. So
yeah, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong here, you're a little more deep into the physics nerd than I am. I'm more of the philosophy guy, but so in physics, there's also a thing called quantum entanglement, and we don't know exactly what causes particles to get entangled. We don't,
and it seems like it's instant causation, right?
Yeah, so, and if you really get deep into it, you'll kind of split your mind thinking about how information can't travel faster than the speed of light, but there's actually a pretty good video by Sean Carroll that explains quantum entanglement, although maybe the closest thing to like instantaneous entanglement in the quantum realm, doesn't mean information is being transferred. You couldn't witness one at the same time as the other. You couldn't perceive them. It's not possible for anything to be enacted upon. So even though it seems to be instantaneous, it doesn't really break the laws of physics because there's no change that could be made in any other way. So anyway, simply, there doesn't necessarily have to be a cause just because something exists.
All right. And the reason why we know the universe has a beginning is because of the expansion of the universe. The universe is apparently expanding, and we know it's expanding because we've used telescopes to observe its expansion. And specifically the James Webb Telescope. The James Webb Telescope is able to detect red light radiation, red light shift.
So
in the
can you pause it right there? So this is like I'm not gonna. I don't want to nitpick. Well, I can because it's not like this was live, right? Like he pre-recorded this, edited it, and then uploaded it, right? So I presume that you agree with you're going to stand behind every word that you said in the video. So this is we talked about the James Webb thing, right? And so obviously we knew about the cosmic inflation far before James Webb. This is something that what's it called? Hubble discovered. What's his name? Yeah, Edwin Hubble, astronomer. Yeah, discovered in like the mid 1920s. He discovered cosmic inflation. This wasn't from the James Webb. James Webb got launched past Christmas, went into service.
Yeah, a year ago on Christmas Day.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if the James Webb has part of his mission is measuring the redshift, but we knew about it far before then.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Doppler, which the famous Doppler effect, wrote actually about how redshift worked in the 1860s. So we've known about how redshift, at least the possibility of redshift, for a long time. I mean, the 1860s is over 100 years ago, and Edwin Hubble literally wrote papers describing redshift and actually putting out mathematical formulas, which one of the formulas included Doppler's name as a reference to the work that he built upon to explain how redshift occurred. And there's red light shift, which are things that are moving further away from us, and there's blue light shift, which is things that are moving closer towards us. And we've known about this for literally over 100 years. So I will say that this portion about cosmic inflation, this might be the one part of the video that I actually agree with. Yes, there is inflation.
Get this right.
Yeah, there is inflation, and the universe is expanding as far as we can tell, and you can tell it from red light shift. However, James Webb was like last year, and we've been doing mathematical formulas on redshift for 100 years. So,
the radiation that's around the galaxies that are furthest out, galaxies have this red tint to them, and the further they are, the more red they are. And so that redness means that it's expanding outward. You can look this up. You don't believe me? You can look it up and verify it for yourself. And also these galaxies that are far out that are expanding, they are expanding faster than the galaxies that are closer to us. Okay, so it's expanding at an exceeding rate the further out you go. So that would indicate, if it's expanding, that means at one point it was at a singularity. It was at a single point. So which means there was a beginning.
I wanted to let him finish that sentence, but yes.
Okay. All right, cool. So, and so this is the point I was talking about. He said it was a singularity, a single point. It sounds very much like you think that a singularity is a single point. That's not what they're talking about. The singularity happens when Einstein's field equations start describing things with infinities. That's your singularity. Imagine like you wanted to see how much you weigh, so you step on your bathroom scale and it says that you weigh infinity pounds, right? That doesn't make any sense, right? Because infinity is not a number, it's a description of a set. So when you step on a scale and it says you weigh infinity pounds, what you know is that the scale needs correcting. The scale is insufficient to weigh you. You need a better scale. And that's essentially what's going on with Einstein's field equations. They stop working. That is a singularity. And it's describing the universe with infinity properties, which doesn't make any sense. It does not have zero volume and infinite density. The equations stop working. And we do think there's a way that you can look past this. That's what M theory is for. That's what superstring theory is for. That is what loop quantum gravity is for.
Yep. And although none of those may solve the problem, none of those may solve it in our lifetime. Essentially, because we have this problem of a singularity, we know that there is a problem in the mathematics. And that is essentially what these theories are trying to resolve. Just like when Newton put forth the theory of gravity, there was zero information about the quantum realm. So when Einstein came forth, he didn't just throw everything Newton did away. What he did is he improved upon the mathematical models. And what M theory and superstring theory specifically are trying to do is improve upon Einstein's theory of general relativity to help solve this problem of a singularity.
Yep.
The universe is
I cannot. Well, I was going to say, remember this point. If you can't remember anything else, remember this: that at the right when the singularity hits, we cannot investigate what's going on. So there's going to be a bunch of more things that he says that has to be because the universe began at that point. And so it's wrong. We cannot investigate. So we don't. He's going to talk about timeless. He's talking about something being spaceless and all that type of stuff. Right? We have no way to investigate beyond that point. So these are just unwarranted assumptions. Go ahead, continue.
Eternal, because a lot of people will want to believe the universe is eternal. The universe can't be eternal. You cannot have an infinite series of events in the past, and you cannot have an infinite previous set of causes in a naturalistic, materialistic point of view.
So I want to point that out for very shortly in the video. It may take us a few minutes to get there because we've been breaking down a lot of things, but very shortly in the video. In fact, I'm going to rewind it about 4 seconds or so. I want you to listen to the exact phrase that gets said because you're going to notice that the argument kind of refutes itself very shortly from something that's stated right here.
Want to believe the universe is eternal. The universe can't be eternal. You cannot have an infinite series of events in the past, and you cannot have an infinite previous set of causes.
Okay, so you can't have a universe that's eternal. You can't have an infinite universe. You can't have an infinite number of things in the past. Okay, these are all things that you're stating in this video right there. So
infinite chain of causes. He's talking about a chain of causality. It can't go in infinity in the past, as we said.
So I just want to point that out for something that's going to happen very shortly in the argument of the video. The video itself is only 11 and a half minutes long, so just something to keep in mind. You're stating that the universe can't be eternal, the chain, like causal chain of events can't be eternal, like infinitely long. Just something to keep in mind.
In a naturalistic, materialistic point of view.
The reason why is
because...
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, play it. He didn't say it yet.
Well, first, we know that the universe could not have possibly created itself.
You want to take that one on?
Yeah, does he give a justification for this? Or was it just another one of those times when he just asserts?
I think it's a one-off. I could be wrong. We can continue the video if you'd like. I will say that the universe and the word create in the same sentence implies that a creator is first necessary. And then, so by that you're kind of pigeonholing. It's kind of like saying the universe froze into existence. Well, that means that it's like solid ice, right? Like that's what you mean when you say something like frozen. It's frozen, right? By using terms create, that means you're implying creator. By using the term dream, all right, dreamt, you imply there's a dreamer. That's problematic for an argument trying to describe where something came from. Because if you're going to presuppose a creation, then you presuppose the creator.
And the reason why is because we know objects don't create themselves. How do we know that? Because when you walk down the street, you live your life, you don't see objects materializing out of nothingness. That's not a thing. That doesn't happen. So why would we assume and accept that?
Sure.
So I thought this was a pretty silly point. So he says, like, we know the universe can't come into existence out of nothingness because when you walk down the street, this isn't like one of your everyday experiences, right? Now, here's something you don't experience on a daily basis. Stellar nucleosynthesis, right? That's how stars are powered, right? It converts, it's special relativity, right? It takes hydrogen and converts it into a less mass substance called helium and turns that energy out into light, right? We don't experience that on a daily basis. But if you look out in the stars, every single one of those stars, they're doing that. So just because you don't experience a thing on your daily walk to the coffee shop doesn't mean that thing can't happen anywhere in the universe. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, come on. I mean, it's like here we are on this one planet where in these very specific conditions that hardly ever change. Therefore, a thing can't happen, here or between here and my path to the grocery store. It can't happen anywhere in the universe.
In the
Can't happen in
universe.
Yeah, I mean, like to me, this is crazy.
Like you can't walk from here to your grocery store and spontaneously the whole Earth gets consumed by fire. However, rocks do collide with stars, and that's exactly what happens in the universe.
Right? Yeah, I don't experience the supernova, you know, on my trip to the mailbox. I mean, like to me, I thought this was very silly. Also, this is what you call a black swan fallacy. Just because you didn't see something or you didn't see something today doesn't mean it's impossible. So that's the problem. I saw Jesse Eaton's comment.
Yeah,
he says,
"I don't address that."
Yeah, I want to address. He says, "I don't necessarily believe this, but why can't you have an infinite series of causal events?" And so, I agree. Like, so there is no contradiction in a chain of infinite causality. It doesn't violate any of the laws of thought, identity, excluded middle, or contradiction. It doesn't do any of those. And also the point when he says about God being infinite, this is something that I wanted to say earlier, and I had just forgot to say. So he says infinite chain of causality. You can go to this specific
You froze
point.
a second.
So if God exists. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So he says, so he's arguing if you have an infinite chain of causality, then you could go infinity in the past, which means you could never get to the present moment, right? So doesn't God exist eternally? So if you go eternally in the past, you would never get to the point where he starts creating stuff, right?
So
I don't see how.
I wanted to like kind of wait until we got to this point and the point of timelessness before we started kind of breaking down this argument, because Jesse's right. As a Christian apologist, he's going to argue that God is indeed eternal, and probably most people could substitute the word infinite. So what we're doing in that instance is we're special pleading for a deity. So, like, the universe can't be eternal. Well, why not? And there's no explanation. But there's a God that has to be eternal. And you're like, well, if God is eternal, he existed an infinite amount of time in the past, which means that we would never get to the infinite amount of time in the future necessary for him to decide to create the universe as it is. So the question is, well, why are you against the argument itself? Is what's the deal with the special pleading? Because we have a special pleading of the universe can't be eternal. Okay, we're like nothing can be eternal except God. Like that one caveat. And so, unless you're willing to explain why something like the universe or the energy that formed the universe or the quantum loop gravity or things that existed, essentially before our presentation of space-time can't be eternal, then why can we apply that to those things but not to your deity?
Also, this also contradicts another thing that he's going to say later, where he talks about, I think he already said this. Like he believed like the universe started at the Big Bang, right? So it came out of nothing. So that's when space and time began, right? So you wouldn't. So if that's when time began, if there's no time, then you wouldn't necessarily be able to go infinity in the past. You could just have an infinite chain of causality. But the cause could be instantaneous, right? So you wouldn't have to be going in the past for it. You see what I'm saying? Because there's no time. So, I mean, this is not something I believe. This is just an internal critique. His objection is a contradiction to something that he said. So,
yeah. And we're going to get into that in timelessness shortly. But
the universe just completely just materialized out of nothing. Doesn't make sense.
Nobody believes that.
Possibility. It's not. It doesn't go along with how we live life and how we experience our reality. That's not reality.
Can we stop there?
Sure.
So that's just another bald assertion. Like he says, it's impossible for the universe to just spawn into existence. That's something that you need to demonstrate. Like, how do you know it's impossible? I'm not saying it's possible. I'm saying if you're asserting that it's impossible, that's going to be something that you need to be able to prove. And the little defense at the end, which is kind of a repeat of what he had said earlier, just because you don't experience universes bursting into existence in your everyday life, that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen ever, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So why would we expect the universe to do it? So the universe had to have been caused by something. Okay? So the only possible way for the universe to exist is to be caused by an uncaused first cause.
Can we stop there?
Yeah, I beat you to it.
Okay.
This is the prime mover argument. It goes back to the time of Aristotle. If you don't know the prime mover argument, it essentially is a case of special pleading. Can't have and I think that's the real argument that tries to get made by the Kalam anyway, is the infinite causation problem. Is that if you say that things can't go in an infinite direction backwards, then you need to have an initial first cause, you need to have a uncaused, you need to have a prime mover, you need to have a uncaused cause, whatever you want to call it. I forget what Ben Shapiro's term for it is, but he uses another very similar term.
Unactualized actual.
That one. Unactualized actualizer.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So essentially it's just a case of special pleading with no real... It's an assertion on things needing a cause to begin with, and then it's an assertion on what must cause them. So assuming that you needed a cause, then you must have something that is uncaused to cause it. But only in the case of the universe, because we know literally everything else that has a cause also has a causer. Like that, it's a double, like, special pleading bargain.
Mm-hmm. But also, I don't see why the first cause has to be uncaused. Like, so he says, I mean, this might be a trivia point, but so he says, like, so the cause of the universe, it had to be eternal. Like, why couldn't this happen? Like, let's say there's an eternal leprechaun, right? And he farts out a god. And so that god then creates the universe. So God is just the middleman. So he's not uncaused. He's a cause. So he's not uncaused. Nor he's the first cause, but he did cause the universe. I don't see the proof or that the universe had to be caused by an uncaused first cause. I just don't get that. He's actually
going to refute his own argument, this specific argument, when he gets into the timeless section. You're going to catch it if you pay attention, and we're going to pause it to make sure you do catch it. But essentially, he's going to go into, well, what if a god caused God that created the universe? And then he kind of gets stuck. And that's a genuine good critique.
Don't spoil it. Just let him see it.
Yeah. That's funny. Jesse says you guys are spot on. Even if you have an uncaused causer, what does this have to be God? That is the whole point of the Kalam, and that is something that a lot of people misuse the Kalam for. They try to point to a God. A lot of people, especially the creator of the Kalam, which is William Lane Craig, and a lot of people who use it are typically arguing for the Christian God, although a lot of its foundations and origin actually come from Islam. And prior to that, you would say it's founded upon Greek philosophy, specifically Aristotle and the prime mover argument. So there's a lot of good reason to use this to argue for the Muslim God as well as the God of the Bible. So Allah as well as Yahweh, if you will, because there's a lot of work that was done, especially in the medieval era, by Muslims, pointing out philosophical points as to why God must exist.
Also, why couldn't the universe just be the first cause?
Yeah. So again, like I said, it's a double special pleading.
He'll give an argument for why it can't be the first cause, but we'll get to that.
You ready to continue?
Yep.
Now, this first cause has 7 key attributes that have to be there in order for anything to exist.
I think he goes through them relatively quickly, if it's okay with you. Let's just let the 7 key attributes. This is the groundwork for the Kalam. These are things that you would say the Kalam is in a nutshell. So let's not break down each individual one until afterwards. Let's let all 7 play out.
Okay.
This cause has to be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, intelligent, and powerful, and uncaused. Okay, This cause has to be spaceless because it made.
So I'm going to pause it there because I think I can get to a picture up on the screen where we can kind of break down this a little better. Like that. So these are the 7 essential arguments for the Kalam. This is how William Lane Craig first posted the Kalam in the Kalam Cosmological Argument book he published as a PhD thesis in a philosophy course back in the 70s. Do you,
Nah, I didn't want to add it. I also wanted him to get to his defense of each of those.
This cause has to be spaceless because it made space. Therefore, it can't be in space. It can't be in the space, in the area where it created. That doesn't make any sense.
Can you stop that?
It can't be made of...
So he said it can't be made in a space, in the area that it made, right? Because it would entail a contradiction, right? Because he's saying if you couldn't exist anything before it's created, right? That's what he's arguing, right? Like you couldn't be in a house if you hadn't built it yet. That's what he's arguing. Right. But however, this thing is timeless, so it wouldn't even be a contradiction, right? There's no reason why God couldn't exist in the space before he creates it. There's no time, right? So I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add to that.
So I will say, just for benefit, if you'd like to either respond to the video or come on the show and defend it, something I will say is that spaceless can mean different things to different people. And what I mean by that is, by spaceless, you could mean that it doesn't occupy space. Or you could mean that it exists beyond space. Or you could mean that it is, you know,
our local presentation of space time.
Our local that's where I want you to, like, if you watch and you want to respond, please clarify, because by saying something is spaceless, it's a little ambiguous. But I'll say that in pretty much the way most people use it, especially since you're like one of the later points that we've already seen is immaterial, you probably don't mean that it doesn't occupy any space, because then you wouldn't also need immaterial.
And I'll say so, to just to add on, when you were talking about how people define space in different ways, like for instance, there's a theory, it's highly speculative, but that the theory goes that black holes lead to another localization of space-time that doesn't interact with ours. Right now, we don't see what's going on at the singularity of the black hole, because again, it's a singularity, right? Einstein's field equations can't explain what's going on at that level, but that's also a possibility. So it could be outside of our space-time, outside of our local presentation of space-time, but still not be outside of space. So this argument doesn't necessarily follow. But go ahead.
I agree. Jesse responded, does this guy have an experience with anything immaterial? What does it mean for something to exist and be immaterial? Excellent question. I have no idea. That I have no answer to. Fortunately, I'm not the one presenting the Kalam argument, so I don't have to defend it. But that is an excellent question, and one that I would present to the Kalam presenter.
Or it can't be bound and in time because it created time. It's outside of time, so it couldn't possibly be in time.
No, it's getting ready to get really good.
Yeah. When did it create time? Hey, when did it create time? It's timeless. So there was a time that time didn't exist. When did it create time? I mean, right? Yeah. I mean, like, to me, this is incoherent. Right, it creates something, right? So it speaks into its existence. These are all things that require time to have any sort of causal relationship. To say I do a thing, and then there is a subsequent. Remember that word.
Very
subsequent
helpful.
Event.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if time does not exist, then it would be impossible to tell any two events in sequential apart. because it would seem like a continuum. There would be no time. Everything would either exist all simultaneously or wouldn't exist all simultaneously because there is no time to bound it to. So when you say something like there was no time, so before the universe, well, by using the word before, you're placing a time marker, a way for us to indicate something happened.
You're describing a win.
Yeah, you're describing a win, a before the universe. Well, before the universe indicates time existed.
Time.
You're referring to a time.
And so get this. So also, like, whenever I used to think, when I was thinking about this earlier a few days ago, I was thinking, when I thought of timeless, I would think kind of like in like the science fiction and the comic books and stuff where everything just stops, right? But that's not timeless. That's just where time pauses, right? There's still time. It's just stopped moving, right? So he's saying it's timeless. Like there is no time. So what does that even mean as far as what are the implications on existence? What does it mean to exist for 0 seconds?
Yeah.
Doesn't that mean that it doesn't exist? If it exists for 0 time, you're saying it doesn't exist. So I don't need, to me, this is incoherent. I need, hopefully if you respond to this video, explain that. This makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I highly encourage, if you don't know too much about time and you kind of want to know what we're talking about, go watch pretty much any superhero movie in which somebody can run really fast. You'll notice for them, time seems to slow down or come to a stop. But that doesn't mean there is no time. Because if time were to cease altogether, that means light couldn't be reflected off of things for you to see them. Because there would be no things. Like there are bigger problems here. If time doesn't exist, the speed of light's irrelevant because it doesn't matter how fast light could travel. There's no time to do it in.
Yeah, I mean, it has a very strong implication on existence itself, existing for 0 seconds, for 0 time, incoherent.
There's no way, and it can't be material. It can't be made of matter because it made matter.
Can we stop?
If it was
Sure.
So I think right here, again, just the nitpick. I think he's being very careless with his words. He says it's immaterial. It can't be made of matter. So nobody thinks that, at least anybody who's any kind of a nerd or a physicist or remotely studied this stuff, they don't think that the at the moment of the Big Bang, there was matter, right? You said immaterial, and then you said matter interchangeable. So like there's two states in our physical world. You have matter and you have energy, right? And so right at the beginning of the Big Bang, it was just energy, right? It was a bunch of electromagnetic radiation shooting out really fast. And what we know is that electromagnetic radiation, the higher the frequency is, like your gamma rays and really super high frequency, the higher the chances of it turning into matter. So a lot of those photons that quickly escaped from the Big Bang instantly changed into quarks. So you didn't have matter at the beginning. So, but it sounds like you're using matter and immaterial in different, and like almost you think they're the same thing. So they believe there was energy, right? So there's not matter; it's energy. Very different.
Also, another fun superhero fact for you: the reason that the Incredible Hulk was pummeled with gamma radiation is because scientists know that gamma radiation is actually the most likely to be able to convert energy into mass. So when he turns big and green and he gets, 3 or 4 times his own physical size, the reason they were using gamma radiation is because they know that is energy that can get turned into mass at a much higher rate than other forms of radiation. So just another fun super comic book nerd thing for you. It is actually based on a very vague but probably most realistic version of anyone being able to turn into a Hulk would be gamma radiation. Useless fun fact for you.
If it was made of matter, then you would have to figure out where its matter came from. And it created matter. So it can't be made of matter. And then it has to be personal because...
Stop.
Man,
He's like, if it was made of matter, Yeah, if it was made of matter, you have to figure out where its matter came from. Like, is that really the argument? So if A, then you'd have to figure something out. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to figure stuff out. Like, I mean, what's going on here? Like this is so the fallacy committed here is called an appeal to consequences. You're saying something A can't be true because it leads to B, and I don't like B. That is what essentially was going on. But in this sense, the consequences are very trivial. You're saying if it's made of matter, then we have to figure out where the matter comes from. Okay, so let's figure it out. Let's figure out where the matter came from. I don't see any value in this argument whatsoever. This is, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a whole lot of thought went into this. But then I think afterwards he says because it can't also be made of matter if it made matter. So it can't be made of the thing that it created. And I don't see any justification for that.
Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of how everything on Earth works currently.
Yeah. Like my dad can't be made of flesh because if he made
flesh. Yeah,
I know,
can't
right?
be made of matter because you're made of matter.
Yeah,
like,
and if he was,
use the same words.
And if he was, I'd have to figure out where his matter
came from.
Like,
exactly.
I mean, I'm just not tracking here.
Yeah.
So anyway, you go ahead.
I mean, the one up on the screen, he's gonna go into a little bit, but he just got to it, and he says the word personal, and there's just yeah, I'll let him state his piece on it before we dive into that one.
Okay. Only persons create. Only persons can decide. So inanimate objects and inanimate energies cannot decide. They don't choose. Only persons choose. And if the universe was created out of nothing, in which there was no time, that means this cause had to have been able to decide and choose.
Stop.
I know. I wanted to let him finish.
But it's gonna be too much to handle. So let's talk about the personal part. So it sounds like he says that someone had to make a decision for the existence of the universe. Like it's almost. Well, not almost as if it sounds quite literally that he is saying that the Big Bang was the result of a decision. And so, as far as we can tell, it's just physics. There are things that happen all the time that aren't the result of decisions. Matter of fact, the vast majority of things, like 99.9999999% of the things that happen in the universe are not.
You could probably add on about 10 more nines onto that.
Yes, probably way more than 10 nines. Yes, yeah. The vast majority of things that happen in the universe are not the product of decisions. So, like,
I want to take it a step further. If we add another 100 nines to that, if you assume that the humans have been on this earth for 250,000 years, and that's a very large estimate. Like, that's the longest I've seen, about 250 to 300,000 years. And you assume that it has to be personal for a decision to be made. Then the first 13.7997 billion years that the universe existed, it existed without a single decision being made.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess he would argue that it was God making the decision. Well, he would say it required. I mean, there's no demonstration of this, but I guess he would say it would have to be. I don't know. But I mean, like,
personal, like, so do animals make decisions?
I mean, yeah.
We wouldn't say they're persons, right?
Yeah. He said, J.C. Eaton says, I forgot that someone decides to cause black holes to exist. Exactly, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like none of this follows. This is just a long series of non sequiturs. Like this makes no sense at all.
Yeah, so, and then you have Timeless going back into it again, saying that, like, well, God had to make a decision. Well,
no, that part didn't play yet.
He did. He said it.
Well, yeah, but he didn't finish the whole part.
Okay, I'll let him finish it. But man,
go back like 5 seconds, and then,
all right, I can do that. Okay, give me a second. I'll go back.
this cause had to have been able to decide and choose outside of time, which is kind of meta in a way, because this being is outside of time, but it's able to choose. And if you're choosing something, that means you are doing a subsequent event.
Stop. Subsequent.
You did it.
Subsequent. So that means that if the subsequent event, that means it came after something, which means time.
So had to have been in place,
which means God couldn't have caused time. He's part of these causal chain.
This decision, if you're appealing to something that exists outside of time, or that had to create time, or that no time existed before the beginning of the universe, what you're doing is saying that nothing could have caused the universe to exist because there is no time for it to exist or to have been caused to exist. The real problem, there's two really big problems that I had when we had the discussion before this conversation started that I wanted to point out. One was personal, one was timeless, because I spend a lot of time thinking about time itself, and I spend a lot of time thinking about persons and personhood and what that means, because I love philosophy and I love time. And by saying the word before, when, etc., you're appealing to a point in time. Time must exist for a subsequent event to happen. Time is necessary for any change to take place. Otherwise, you would not be able to distinguish state A from state non-A, which means either things are always the same or that no time has passed because it is not existent. So if the universe does not exist, a change must take place, A, the universe existing, for us to recognize that there is any difference between a non-existent universe and an existent universe. What is the only way we can tell those two things apart? Examining the state of events before and examining the state of events after. Both of which require time.
You know, what's crazy is that, so William's really smart dude. And so I'm not surprised that this happened, because what I feel like is that this was the first time that he had said that out loud. And once he said it, it's like he caught himself. He's like, wait a minute, like, what's going on here? Like, there's something like fishy here. And that's why I'm not surprised that this happened, because it's like you can see him like he's struggling trying to make sense of this. It's because it's a contradiction. Don't try to make sense of it. Just get rid of this. This is a bad argument.
Yep, I agree 100%. Bad argument. It really goes against your whole timeless thing, and I think you see in the video that he's stumbling on it. And it's when you're smart as William is, and he, again, I agree, he's a super smart guy. When you come across something like this, your intuition kind of like, oh, red flag, something's off here, and you then start to justify it and use logic in your head. And what you do by doing that is you start poking holes in it, and that's exactly what happened in this case. Is, oh, wait, well, if time didn't exist, he had this cause, he had to decide, which is a subsequent event, his exact words, subsequent event, which means time had to have occurred because an event occurred and then a subsequent event occurred, which means time occurred. But timelessness. So there's a huge problem here that needs to get addressed, and we're going to see the rest of this argument to see what happens.
So at one point there was no universe, right? Which means the being had to have chosen within its realm, which isn't bound by time.
Stop. Within its realm? I thought it was spaceless. Like, what is this realm? I mean, how big is it that it can hold God? And what's the cause of the realm? Is that also God? Would that entail that God is realmless? Right? I mean, what's going on here? Like, this makes no sense. So there's space. And then there's a space outside the space called the realm. And that's where God's in. I mean, like,
But what caused that realm to exist?
what cause? I mean, well, I don't know.
Did God cause the realm?
Well, he can't be inside the thing that he causes, right? Just because of the spatial argument that he made, right? So there's something outside the realm that caused the realm, and that thing has to be realmless,
and it has to exist in order for God to exist in it.
Yes, and it has to be timelessless.
Yes, and spacelessless.
Yes, with realmless. I don't know.
Yeah,
make it make sense.
Yeah, I mean, if you respond, this is one of the ones that like we just like immediately just red flagged on. Like you got to stop the play here. You say realm, and there's another word you're about to use here in just a second when you use time. But when you say God exists in a realm, doesn't that mean he occupies some form of space or some location? Because that realm is a location.
Yeah.
But you said in the first point was that he was spaceless. So,
also, I think he said there was a point when there was no time. Really? When was that?
Yeah.
When was there no time? You know, right?
Time.
You know, yeah. So,
yeah.
To create something in time, very meta. But keep tracking with me.
Stop it right there.
Next thing.
Just really quick. So, like, there's not even a defense for this. He just calls it meta, and then he just moves on. So, just wanted to point that out. I don't know what he means by that, by meta.
Yeah, I've often incited a concept of meta time, which I don't think most physicists prescribe to, but
it's in loop quantum gravity.
Yeah, essentially loop quantum gravity, where time as our local presentation of it is what we understand and perceive it as. However, we're all aware that in order for a event to happen, time must also be present. So for the initial expansion of the universe and anything that preceded that, where our singularity, where our argument breaks down, where our math breaks down, some form of time must exist. Because that's the only way that anything could continue to happen. Time must pass. I think that's a pretty simple argument there, but that's just my 2 cents. But to break down the argument, again, it's an argument. It's an internal critique of the argument, not the person making it. Because again, I think William, I've had many a conversation with him. He's a smart guy, but when you say things like it's meta, but you don't provide an explanation for what you mean by that, you're leaving open room for interpretation, room for just like essentially just passing off the argument.
Yeah, it's not.
I could be like, "Oh, how did the universe begin?" Oh, it's all meta. Just trust me, it's meta.
Yeah, that's, like, what is that? That's not an explanation.
All right, let's continue.
Thing has to be intelligent because of the fine-tuning of the universe. We're going to go through all the videos, all of the different topics of the fine-tuning universe. The fine-tuning universe is absolutely insane. If you go through just everything, gravity, DNA, just like the positioning of the Earth and all the other 13 qualifications for there to be life on Earth at all. There's 14 conditions. Everyone talks about the Goldilocks zone, and
you stop right there.
Not too far from.
Sure.
So he said that briefly about the Goldilocks zone, fine tuning, right? So this would make sense if your god was like Zeus or Thor or something like that, where you had a god that was very powerful but not omnipotent. It doesn't. This argument doesn't. Fine tuning doesn't work well for a god being omnipotent, because it implies that God is limited by the laws of physics. So he said about the Goldilocks zone. The Goldilocks zone is a position that a planet has to be to it. It's the distance that a planet has to be to its sun in order to have liquid water. So if it's outside the Goldilocks zone, if it's too close, it's all going to evaporate, right? If it's too far, it's going to be frozen, right? So what you're saying is, if God put it right in the Goldilocks zone, you're saying that if it was outside that, you can't have liquid water, it would freeze. And not even God can change that. Isn't God all powerful? Why? So it raises other questions like, why did these where did these laws of physics come from? Why do they even control God's own actions? You know, so I mean, it makes little sense. If your God is omnipotent, then he could put the earth wherever he wanted to in relation to the sun. He could put it inside the sun, and you could still have life as you know it, because God controls the laws of physics. So, which means it wouldn't be fine tuned. So,
yeah, agreed. Let's move on to the next one.
The sun is not too hot, not too cold. That's just one. There's 30.
Oh, by the way, he says there's 14 total, and he's going to make a video going over each of them. If he does, and you guys enjoy this video, and you'd like us to tackle that video when it gets produced, we'll do so.
13 other things that need to be there for Earth to have life. Fine-tuning. And then the next thing, attribute for this cause, is powerful. This cause has to be very powerful to create something from nothing.
So I agree something has to be powerful to create something from nothing. I don't know nothing philosophical sense can exist.
Yeah, I mean, like what's a nothing? From what we can tell, there's just no such thing as that. Also, too, I mean, so you could have. So he said it has to be powerful in order to cause the universe. So why couldn't you have like a very insignificant weak thing that starts off a chain that gradually leads up to a powerful thing, right? You have like a really small domino that falls and knocks over a larger domino that knocks over a larger one, and etc. So the cause of the universe doesn't necessarily have to be powerful.
Yeah, there's a few equations that actually talk about how a very insignificant change or manipulation, such as like tipping of a domino, can cause things like a building collapse within a certain amount of steps. So you start with a tiny domino, you flip it over, that domino, it doubles in size, and it doesn't take many steps before you're knocking down buildings. So you could start with a very potentially tiny thing, and it really doesn't take that many steps to get to something pretty fascinatingly strong.
Right? So these, and then also uncaused. And we'll talk about that in a second. All these characteristics, all these attributes are attributes of who we call God.
Just want to point out that's a straight assertion.
Yeah.
Because other than powerful, intelligent, you could argue for personal, those wouldn't be biblically correct definitions of God. Because even the Bible says he exists like within the heavens, and that he does things like control time, and stops the sun from moving around the earth in Joshua. Which, if you're a science nerd, you know that's not how that works. But anyway.
Well, I don't want to call it God. Okay, fine, don't call it God. But it's an intelligent designer nonetheless. Because you cannot have anything. Because otherwise you'd have an infinite regress of objects. Because if you say the universe was caused by the particles, the pre-existing particles before the universe, okay, well, where'd those particles come from? Well, those particles came from the quantum nebula. Okay, where'd the quantum nebula come from? Well, the quantum nebula came from the antimatter gravitational particle field. Okay, where'd the antimatter
gravitational
particle field come?
Sure.
So, like, and I feel like this right here is just like a straw man, right? Because when he talks about what caused the universe, then he says the pre-existing particles, right? So nobody thinks that it was particles that pre-existed the universe. Nobody's arguing that. Then he says the particles came from the quantum nebula, which is a like nonsensical term, right? Nebula is just this cloud of gas. And quantum is something that describes, and it's in quantum mechanics, right? We're talking about subatomic particles here. So this makes no sense.
So I'll steel man the argument itself by saying that it's possible he's just saying it doesn't matter what you state before.
Yeah, he's talking about the chain of causality. What I was going to say was, like, why not just give like actual arguments? Like, why not just say, before that there was another particle, maybe like something that scientists are actually saying, instead of just making up
like strings or quantum loop gravity.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty out there. But why make things up? Quantum nebulas? Come on, man.
You have an infinite regress of objects, of causes, and you cannot have that. You cannot go into the past forever to figure out where all these material causes came from, because we will not get to the point where we are today. We will not get to present, because we're going in the past forever to figure out where all the causes came from. And the same thing applies to God. Well, who created God? No. God is uncaused. God has to be uncaused. Otherwise, nothing would exist. Well, why do you say that? Because if God was caused, well, who created this God? Well, this God created this God, and this God created this God, and this God created this God.
Yeah, I don't disagree, actually. You could argue the same thing. So that's where we pointed out very early in the video, you have a case of special pleading happening here, where what caused this one thing in the universe? And then we talk about infinite regression. Well, if we can't special plead for the universe, why can we special plead for this God?
Forever. Forever! You're going back for 70 trillion gazillion years to figure out where all these
Timeless
gods came from, and we will never get to our current God that created this universe. Therefore, nothing would exist. So you have to have
no time, remember?
Uncaused, first cause with those 7 key attributes: spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, intelligent, powerful, uncaused. You have to have.
Can you pause right there?
Yep.
Just want to add the fact that he described God as being timeless completely defeats his argument, right? Because if you say like, so he existed. I know this makes no sense, but he existed prior to time, right? So now we're talking about for causality, you don't need time for it. It could be instant, so you don't have to go in infinity in the past. Yep. So just pointing this out.
6 or 7. Math. You have to have all those attributes for this cause for anything to exist. Okay? So that is the Kalam cosmological argument. All right? Now, do we arrive at the God of the Bible with this argument? No, we don't.
Yeah, I pointed this out at the beginning of the video. Even he admits this does not arrive to a God of the Bible. I personally don't see how the argument arrives you at a God, and given the refutation of the points that we just made, I'd be hard-pressed to say you arrive at anything, because if something exists for 0 time, you would say that that thing does not exist. If something does not have any sort of matter or is immaterial, then it does not exist. So, I mean, I hate to be the classic Facebook meme of Christian versus atheist debate, but there's a meme that says, like, oh, God is spaceless and timeless, and you're like, oh, you're describing 2 things that don't exist, just like your God. Well, not to be pedantic, but by describing something as spaceless and timeless, you're describing things that, by definition, cannot exist.
For all we know, this is just a generic God that we established. But God is an absolute necessity for the universe existing. And we call it God because those are the attributes of God, the Bible. I'm going to go with that. Okay? You can call it whatever you want to call it, but you absolutely need an intelligent designer for the universe to come to existence. Now, to point that intelligent designer to Christ, we will do that in subsequent videos. So you have to stay tuned. So, drop in the comment section, like the video, share it. If you
can we skip this part to the
if
IG?
You want to reply
clip?
to this video, create a video.
The math one?
And then
yeah.
Yep.
I think he's done with that argument.
Yeah, I agree.
We got like we can knock this down in like 4 or 5 minutes. It'll be quick.
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'll move this around so I can get us up on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yo, can you hear that in the background?
Very slightly.
Okay, cool.
Not enough to get us banned from YouTube for it.
Good. That's important.
All right. So I got this up on the screen. Keep in mind, this doesn't really pause or reverse and play as well as the normal YouTube video because it's a short.
Cool. We play the whole thing all the way through.
But we can play it all the way through once and if we need to. So.
All right, let's play it all the way through once. Let me just respond
these
to
math equations, these math realities existed before humans. Because if you say humans invented math, that doesn't make sense because the universe existed before the human race was here. So, and that math equation was true before we discovered it. And math somehow describes physical realities, describes laws of nature, which it seems kind of crazy that something abstract that definitely exists will describe something physical, like gravity. How's that possible? Because it takes a mind to understand math and discover math, understand it, be able to apply it to natural phenomena, natural laws, right? And it takes a mind to do that. So it would seem to me that math comes from a mind, the first mind, the alpha mind.
Okay, cool. So his argument, he says it makes no sense to say humans invented math because the universe existed before humans. And then he says in math describes the universe. So you defeated your argument here. So this is the point. Math describes the universe, right? It's a description of it. It is not the universe, right? So you could have the universe without math. You could have the universe without any description of it. So I could pick up a rock, right? I don't have a rock here, but if I had a rock, I could use math to describe this geometry, its weight, how far it could be thrown, etc. Right? If there was no math around or no mind around, the rock wouldn't cease to exist. The rock would still be there. It would just be no description of it. It's just the language. So.
More specifically, there would be no mathematical description of it because you could still say things like the color of the rock.
Yeah.
You could still describe it and give it a name. You could call it a rock. What math does is it's a language for us to describe like physical attributes that can be weighed and measured and approached from different people with the same instruments and the same knowledge and get the same conclusion. So you take a block of wood and you say like it weighs this amount and it's this length by this width by this height, and you could put it in water, you could tell its density, right? Well, these are things you're doing to describe the block of wood. That didn't make the block of wood. It's a descriptive process, not a prescriptive, because I could prescribe things about this block of wood, but this particular block of wood may not meet those prescriptions. Like I can try to prescribe things to something that you may have on your desk, but that doesn't mean if you hold the object up, it's going to meet those requirements. I say, on your desk, there's a mug that's made of glass and it has 14 ounces of water in it. Well, like, I mean, there could be. But what you could do is hold up an object, and then we could both describe it using terms, and now we have a language which we can communicate about it. And that's all math does.
He talked about gravity, right? He gave the equation for gravity. It was the law of gravity. Yeah, and so what's going on here? He says the universe seems to like abide by that law. No, it is describing what's going on, right? So you can use special relativity to describe stellar nucleosynthesis, right? It wasn't like that Einstein made these equations and then the sun decided to obey them, right? No. The sun was already doing its thing, and then we describe it with the mathematical equation. That's what's going on. That's what's happening. Yep. Like you have it backwards here. So the universe isn't obeying laws. The law in science is a description. It is describing how the universe behaves.
Yep. It is how we've described something would work. So we know that objects of different masses in a vacuum fall at the same rate. Well, guess what? That's not like some universal law that was just like made up and the things just happen to exist that way. We've observed these things. We've put tests in place. We've put objects of different masses in a vacuum. We've measured their fall rate. They happen to be the same. Then we put a bunch of other stuff in there. We had a bunch of people do independent studies. And then we said, oh, yeah, this happens to work out no matter what objects you put in there of different masses. If they're in a vacuum, they do fall at the same rate. And then we're like, oh, cool. This is a law of science. We've described these events as they're happening. It's not some universal construct that things of different masses happen to fall at a separate rate and we just stumbled upon it one day. No, we're describing a set of events that happen, and if things alter those set of events, the law no longer works. Like, so that's how you know it's descriptive, because if you change the premises of the law, it doesn't work. It's not like the universe is going to abide to them. You could say, like, objects of different masses outside of a vacuum also fall at the same rate and drop a bowling ball and a feather at the same time outside of a vacuum. Well, just because we write the law that way doesn't mean it's a good one or a very descriptive one, because we know if you perform that test on your own, you're going to notice that that's not the way it works. All the law is doing is describing how these things work. It's a descriptive language that we use, and it specifically involves things like measurements, shapes, shading, space, density, etc. So, like, that's what math is for. It's not some unwritten laws in the universe that we're just like, oh, well, let's write that down. That's going to be, No, it's how we describe events that happen and play out. Is there anything else you wanted to add to either video?
Nope. I think we said it all.
That's IgoByWilliam on YouTube. We will link his page in the comments, or in the comments and the description of the video. If you have any critique of our critique of the argument, or if you'd like to come on and argue either the Kalam or something else, please reach out to us in the comment section, shoot us an email, find us on Facebook. We're everywhere you can find us. We're easy to find. Go support William, like his channel. If you like the argument, if you think we got something wrong, show your support on his page. Go give comments about why you agree and what you agree with and why. Or comment on ours about what you disagree with and why. In the meantime, if he does put out that list of 13 things or 14 things that life is required to have on Earth, that's required on Earth for life, we might respond to that if you guys enjoyed this one. If you have any video suggestions or ideas that you want us to see, or if you have another video kind of like this one that you'd like us to respond to and kind of break down things, let us know. We'd love to do it. Other than that, was there anything you wanted to add, AAA?
Nope. Thanks for tuning in. Let us know how you like the format. We're just trying to figure out ways to bring more viewers to the channel. If you like live debates, if you prefer live debates, let us know in the comments. If you want to see more of this, let us know. We'll do more. So.
Yeah, and thanks for stopping by as always. Jesse, thanks for jumping in. Morpheus, I know you were tuning in because you sent us messages about the audio. Thanks for tuning in and catching us. We'll see you in the near future, probably next week. Have a good day, guys.